the liberal leftist. I'm still relatively new to like the fixation on the distinction.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting to see like in real time a bunch of people in the comments really harping on the fact that this was a liberal event, and even talking about how inept and unproductive it was because it was a liberal event.
Yeah.
So I don't know. All right, how you feeling, bro?
I'm feeling good, dude. Glad to be in the house of the Lord tonight. You know what I'm
House
saying?
of the Lord. I hope my apartment can be termed the house of the Lord.
I felt something when I walked through the threshold. Like
I didn't do my incense today.
You didn't anoint the door with oil or nothing like that?
No, not today.
Sheep's blood?
I did not. Sheep's blood? What are we, some pagans? It's not the Old Testament. We're in a new dispensation.
Bro, okay, this is not a front on. I'm not talking about Albanians. Don't come at me or anything. Okay. That just reminded me the first time I ever saw sheep's blood.
Okay.
So, you know, I grew up in North Philly. We're in row houses. I ain't never seen a sheep or animal or any kind of farm animals.
Yeah.
And we had some new Albanian neighbors. We had a ton of Albanian people start to move into North Philly.
Yeah.
And I had these new friends, Indrid and Florian. I went to their house. They were like 4 doors down. And I spent the night at their house.
Okay.
And so they're like, hey, you want to see something cool? I'm like, yeah. They're like, hey, come downstairs. We go downstairs. In their unfinished basement, they have 2 sheep, a little black sheep, a little white sheep.
Racial reconciliation.
Yeah, exactly. There's some symbolism there. I haven't quite figured it out still. But we're playing with these sheep. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. We go to bed that night. We wake up in the morning. They're like, you want to go see the sheep? I'm like, yeah. We go down. They're dead, hung, skin, hanging from the ceiling, skulls on the fridge.
Damn.
They had got them from New Jersey and just brought them back over to Philly. And, you know, I mean, that's meat for the... I mean, honestly, if you think about it, it makes sense. Like, that's the smart way to do it. But as, like a kid from the hood in North Philly, I was not prepared.
I wouldn't be ready for that right now, honestly.
So, you know, anyways, I can call them up and see if they do have some sheep's blood for you. They might have some extra.
I'm great, man. Okay. I think that would bring some bad energy to this space.
All right.
That's funny, man. Have you heard of a raw dog walk?
A raw dog walk?
Raw dog walk. First of all, I won't be saying raw dog. And there's some, I remember a few years ago, some of my white friends they will always say raw dogging about everything. And I thought it was so weird. Like, we're at a restaurant and, you know, I don't put my phone in the case.
Yeah.
So they're like, you're raw dogging your case? And I was like, raw dog in a case? What you mean, bro? Like,
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are these friends white?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, it was a mixed group, but the people who said this were definitely white.
Right, yeah.
But anyway, so I saw on TikTok, somebody said, you need to do more raw dog walks. And what they mean is basically you go on a walk with no phone, no music.
Oh, okay.
I guess we got to use phones to get back in the apartment, but like turn your phone off.
Yeah.
So I've done that a couple times this week, and it's been really therapeutic.
Yeah.
I mean, today it's cold as hell in Chicago, but it's just nice to like let your thoughts roam freely, your default mode network. There's a lot of things that, at least in my head, get jumbled up, and I'm on my phone and my computer all day doing work. So it's nice to just have some time to walk. So
let me get this straight. You just been walking around the streets of Chicago raw dogging it?
Bro. If that's what you want to call it.
You've been going on raw dog walks.
Dog walks.
Let me tell you this. That sounds like amazing to me, but it sounds stressful. Okay. Because I think I have a problem. My wife, she started calling me an android. Okay. Because I always have like one AirPod in. If I'm doing something active with her and the kids, but if I'm doing anything else,
that's me too.
I'm always listening to something, and going on a walk and not having anything in. I feel like I would really get something out of it, but it feels daunting because I have a friend that keeps trying to get me on this silence retreat at a monastery in Minnesota.
Yeah,
it feels like doing that.
I'll be down to do that.
It sounds cool.
You just got to get over that hump. The same thing with the walk, right? Like I went on Monday. The first 10 minutes, I felt like my brain was it was just in knots. It was like trying to untangle itself, and I was like, "What the fuck's going on?" Because I hadn't done it in a while. But after 10, 15 minutes, just the mental clarity that came out. I wanted to keep walking, but it was getting late.
It is hard. It's like that hump is hard to get over. But if you hit that hump hard, you could raw dog all day.
My God. I saw the look in your eyes. I knew you were about to go somewhere else with that. Oh my God. Let's get into it, man.
Yeah, what do we got? All right, man. Hey guys, welcome back to episode 3 of Ask the Next Question. I'm excited to be here. I'm Colten.
I'm Joshua.
And we got a great show planned for you guys today. Josh, what's our first topic, man? What's the first question?
The first question we've got on tap is no kings an effective movement?
Okay, so keeping it light, starting off
Keeping it light as always.
All right, so is No Kings an effective movement? So this has been, a controversial thing, but, obviously, first off, huge event, 7 million people. I think they had like 5 million people the last time they did this in June.
It's bigger.
They had 7 million people across all 50 states, mass mobilization. Here in Chicago, I think we had like 250,000.
It felt like 2 million.
Because you were there.
Yep, I was there.
So what was it like when you were there in person?
Yeah, so one thing I learned about protests is never get there early, and I got there too early.
Oh, okay.
So
you were like crammed into the middle?
I was crammed in. So they had a stage, there was like a rally. I didn't really look too much into the itinerary, but there was like a huge rally in Grant Park in Chicago. So I got there with a friend. We got there pretty, I guess a little bit early, but you could see the masses of people from the city because I walked from here up to Grant Park, and there was so many people coming down. Yeah. And it was an incredible amount of energy, right?
Yeah.
Like the weather was nice, it was great. And so Governor Pritzker spoke at the rally, Mayor Johnson spoke at the rally. There was a few other speakers. We were packed in Grant Park. But I think one of the things that I noticed being there was one, just how much energy, excitement. It just felt like there was a lot of things that people have felt in their heart, and especially, looking at the news all the time, there's been a lot of things going on in Chicago. So it felt like people needed an opportunity to release some of that energy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And even for myself, right? Like scrolling on TikTok, seeing the news, and, especially over the past month or so since the National Guard's been here, there's been a lot of frustration seeing what's been going on day after day after day. And so, going to an event like that and seeing a large number of people from the community that are also on the same page and frustrated it is therapeutic, and it's a little bit hopeful. I did notice that there wasn't a whole lot of Gen Z. It felt like the crowd was slightly older.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, not that there wasn't any young people, but I noticed that there was more people probably like 40 and up than there was maybe at like the Black Lives Matter protests or like the George Floyd protests that I was at in 2020.
That was skewed much younger?
That was much younger, yeah. I mean, I was in Cleveland at the time, but there was I feel like there was nobody under 30 at the protest there, but this one felt like there was a lot more older people. I also noticed that there wasn't as many black people there. There was black people there. I mean, Chicago is one of the blackest cities in the nation, but for the amount of people that are here, I just didn't see that many. And I think from like the first No Kings protest and some of the other things that have gone on over the summer, I've seen on social media and have had conversations around like, should black people be at these sort of events right now? Yeah. And I feel torn about it because on one hand, like I think there is some like protest fatigue coming off of 2020 and just like the mass mobilization that we have been on the front lines, and the fear that if there's a lot of black people in attendance, things may become more violent from the side of the police, which I think is very real. But I also think that it's important to stand in solidarity, especially with what's going on with ICE, with our Latin brothers and sisters. So being there in support of them, I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to be in attendance. But
so I have a question for you, because this is something I've been thinking about with the framing of like No Kings protest, right? I get why it's rhetorically powerful as like a thing against Trump. I'm curious, what do you think is like the real animating factor getting 7 million people out there? Yeah. Is it just that Trump is like denying court orders? Is it ICE? Is it really an equal combination of all that stuff? Or do you think that, like, for example, if Trump was doing everything else was happening, but ICE wasn't like terrorizing our neighborhoods and our neighbors, do you think we'd still have the same numbers? Do you think that's the biggest thing? Or
I mean, if you think about back in June, ICE hadn't been on their tear yet. Yeah. And there was still a lot of frustration because you could see the trajectory from January 21st, whatever the inauguration was on. Like it was a full-on assault on DEI, on the Doge and things like that were happening. I think that's why they had hands off was a thing that people were saying back then. But it just felt like an escalation of lawlessness and breaking of norms. Of course, like what's been going on with ICE, for sure. But even back in June, there was not here, but I think you remember CCOT, that the prison they were taking people to deny folks due process, and Trump was kind of, again, like ignoring court orders. So it just felt like we were on a very fast track towards authoritarianism. So I feel like people would have came out regardless. But to your point, like, I don't know like what's the demand, right? I think that's the
Sure.
question. No kings, right? Like that's
Yeah.
a bit amorphous.
Right. Yeah, and I guess there's been a lot of pushback, and bro, you've been kind of popping on TikTok, talking about this specifically.
Yeah.
After having been there,
Yeah.
and one, experiencing some things firsthand,
Yeah.
and then two, also just seeing all of the discourse, kind of the leftist versus liberal
Yeah.
discourse surrounding the parade specifically.
Yeah. Parade.
Yeah. Did I say parade?
You said parade. We know what side you're on.
Oh my gosh, bro.
That's funny. So
I mean, listen, parades. I like parades. You know, I'm a parade guy. You know.
it certainly felt like a parade. I mean, we're walking through the streets. The police are on the sides. We've got things mapped off, marked off for us to walk through the middle of the street. I mean, the folks that say it was a parade, I see exactly why you would say something like that. But so I made a couple videos on TikTok talking about, one, you know, I experienced what some would consider a microaggression, some would just consider it racism. I was having a conversation with a person at the protest after the rally. This person was white, and there was an older gentleman and an older woman that was from some socialist party. I got to look up and see what socialist party they were from. We're handing out pamphlets, and they walked past me. So I'm standing on the left, the person I'm talking to is standing on my right, and we're trying to find some other folks that I was trying to meet up with. And they walked past me, and I'm looking at them, expecting them to say something to me because they're holding pamphlets and they look like, you know, I've seen this before. They walked past me and started talking to the person next to me and had like maybe a 2 to 3 minute conversation with them. I'm standing, it's not like I'm just happen to be standing next to them. I'm standing right next to them.
Yep.
They didn't acknowledge my presence. They didn't say, do you want a pamphlet? They didn't say, how you doing? They talked to this person, handed them a pamphlet, and walked off.
Yeah.
Now, there's so many other things going on. We're packed like sardines.
Sure.
We had just like broken off from the giant crowd that was trying to get into the parade section of the event. So like I didn't like fully register, but afterwards I came back and I was like, yo, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
It was a weird thing. So I made a TikTok about it, and then I made another TikTok just talking about the difference between the way liberals and leftists are kind of approaching or talking about the event.
Sure.
And I noticed, one, when I made the video about the what I called racist incident, there's a lot of people that their only comment was, that was liberals, not leftists. And I'm like,
it was a socialist.
this is a socialist. I said
Yeah.
that very clearly, but they're like, this is a liberal event. And
Yeah.
that was the thing that probably like 50 people commented.
Yeah, because people don't really listen.
They don't listen. I mean, I wish I listened better on TikTok sometimes, but
Yeah.
your limbic system is triggered by something and then you comment.
Yeah, you want to reply.
Exactly. But
Reply guy.
so it was weird. Like the liberal leftist, I'm still relatively new to like the fixation on the distinction.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting to see like in real time, a bunch of people in the comments really harping on the fact that this was a liberal event, and even talking about how inept and unproductive it was because it was a liberal event. So I don't know. What's your take on that?
Well, I think there's racists everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think, racism is something that pervades, Barbara Fields and Karen Fields, sisters, they wrote a great book called Racecraft.
Yeah.
It kind of talks about how racism is not really real. Racism is an illusion created by a kind of witchcraft that they call racecraft. And that racism is actually created by the actual actions that we take. So like what they did there, clearly there's a lot going on, but what you're telling me you recognize was they very obviously made a distinction to skip over you and not talk to you and to approach some white people next to you.
Right.
And that could be rooted in all kinds of stories that they've been told and told themselves that have seeped into their subconscious about why you may not be interested, that are all rooted in what we would call racism. The distinction about you is not necessarily true. Like what they believe, the racist belief that they have, that's not real, but it's that act of racecraft that can take otherwise good people that have like good values, that want to do the right things, and they're thinking like, he's probably more interested in woke politics than class politics, or race politics than class politics, right? And that's not, they couldn't even be further from the truth, right? Based on what I know about you.
Right.
And so it could be that. It could just be that they're scared of black people.
Very real.
You know?
I do have a RBF, some people say, so. but RBF has different connotations when the face is black.
That's exactly
and when the
right.
face is white.
That's exactly right. Yeah. As you know, as we saw this week, and this is totally unrelated, but just reminding me of the whole staffers, the Republican staffer, or the young Republicans sending all these racist texts talking about how they love, the mustache man, how they love, all this terrible Nazi stuff, and
explicitly.
JD Vance gets up and he's like, hey, we got to cut these young men some slack. You should see a picture of these kids. They're 30-year-old men. Meanwhile, you watch the Department of, was it DHS? It
was DHS.
They edited that video using AI of those young black teenagers to make them look like they were doing something menacing, unpatriotic. They were actually doing something completely different. And put threatening text out towards them, like, we're coming for you or something like that.
The Department of Homeland Security.
Yes. And so, it's absolutely
but
true.
But there's no such thing as institutional racism.
Right, exactly, yeah.
No such thing.
But it is, so what I'm saying is, it's actually true, black people and white people are held to completely different standards, even when it comes to something like resting bitch face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, but I don't know, bro. I think that, to me, it's those people might have been racist, absolutely, doesn't say anything about socialism as an idea.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that can get lost sometimes on TikTok. Because, you make videos as well, right? You make a 30-second video, something pops in your head, and then people take something from it that you didn't mean. And I tried to, signal to that in that video and in other videos where I made observations about some things I'm noticing in leftism, that, it's not deterring me, it's an observation. I'm not making a blanket statement. But I'm also saying critiques of leftism are taken by liberals, and they're running with it.
Sure.
Oh, look at these leftists. They're racist too. I don't even mess with them. So it's weird. I don't know. What do you think, again, about this, the beef, as maybe I should put it, between the left and liberals, in particular around the No Kings protests?
I think that one, we have to make a big distinction between critiquing leftism and critiquing random children online that are overzealous and are acting like feds. Yeah. You know what I mean? And when I say that they're acting like feds, who I'm talking about are the kids that get on TikTok and Instagram and make very good and important points about why an event like No Kings is not should be understood in its proper context, not as a true revolutionary event, but as more like a parade that takes place within the bounds the empire allows it and allows people to maybe even pass. But there are a lot of good critiques of No Kings. But instead of getting on and talking about those in a way to the people who are interested in No Kings that pulls them further in our direction, they just want to get on and scold people. And in that degree, they're no worse than, on the left, we often were referred to, liberals as woke scolds, especially in the time around the last, couple elections, where it felt like you couldn't, say anything, quote unquote. Of course, I never believed that. You could always say anything you wanted to. You just got pushback from certain people for saying it. But where there was this kind of sense around it was more important to always get things right the first time than it is to progress along the pathway. It's almost like Hegel never did dialectics, and we don't understand that people, ideas, and the world is progressing through a dialectical process, right? So rather than understanding that, you have these young leftists online that have maybe heard or come to understand the critiques of this liberal kind of protest, and they're just getting on and talking about it in a way that just pushes people further away and sows discord within the movement that is wanting to stand in contrast or in opposition to the fascist regime that's currently in power.
Yeah, and I mean, those things do well on social media for a reason, right? It
Yeah.
resonates with the in group. The in group also feels a certain way about the out group. The same thing often goes in religious spaces, right? Like there's a long history, as you know, from your degrees of Christian heresy hunting.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Right. So like
that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're believing something that's not quote unquote orthodox, then you are not just wrong, you're thrown out, you're immoral, you're a bad person.
Yes.
Instead of saying, well, let's have a dialogue about what these differences are and maybe we can build a coalition. Because sometimes I don't even know, like I said, I'm still new, so I'm still trying to figure out like what's the aim, what's the goal, and I think there's space for, especially in a moment like this, if our goal is to push back against Trump's authoritarianism, I think ultimately we may have fundamental disagreements about what the root cause of that is.
Right.
But the immediate threat, I think we should be able to build a coalition around making demands and pushing for things that actually will curb some of the authoritarianism that we can see very clearly. And then in that process, I think you could pull, like you said, pull people in.
Yeah.
And say, hey, actually, there's some root causes that you're missing as we're fighting against this thing that's in front of us.
You know what's sad is like that racist couple that like looked over you at the event. They're the kind of leftists doing the thing that I'm saying that they should be doing. Like they're going to the big event and going, hey, here's all these people who are ripe for the harvesting. And people, because that was me. I was the guy that like was leading the hashtag I'm with her group chat with my friends, you know, super liberal, Obama's number one fan, that just kind of kept reading and starting to understand the critique of like, oh, you know, like we talked about many times in this episode, like, okay, Hillary and Obama seem to be better for gay people in America, but really bad for brown children in the Middle East.
Right.
You know what I mean? You start to get all of that. So I think that it is important though, just to take the source of like who you're hearing from into consideration, and because there are so many leftists online who are actually doing much better work. You know, my boy Jean-Paul Fartre on Instagram and BB Abolitionist on Instagram or on TikTok. You have people like Madeline Pendleton on TikTok who, you know, she gets a lot of hate, and I'm totally open to like discovering that she's a bad person. I have not figured out why she's a bad person yet.
I just started connecting with her, following her a couple weeks ago. So
every time I see she's like, bro, like, you know, there was like a whole thing recently where there's like a younger like socialist guy named CJ who was, you know, doing some stuff. He's a young black guy, I think, from St. Louis. And
I know.
He likes to beef with people, which is like funny to me.
He's a young dude. He's a teenager, isn't he?
And
sharp.
So smart. Like, I wish I had a fraction of his potential because this kid is like, I mean, I don't even want to call him a kid. Like, this young man is like phenomenal, but was kind of like repeating some State Department talking points about other countries, right? Like, by the way, like, you know, what do I mean by that? Like, anytime you talk about other countries being, you know, run by dictators, we only really say that about the countries the State Department tells us to say that about, and the only countries the State Department tells us to say that about are countries that won't sell private companies from the U.S. their resources for cheap.
Funny how that works.
That's right. You know, everyone else, like, meanwhile, we're propping up the Shah in Iran. You know what I mean? Who's like a brutal dictator. We propped up Pinochet. You know what I mean? Like, we prop up brutal dictators all the time as long as they're willing to sell us their country's natural resources for cheap. And anybody else we call a dictator. And so you can see people on the left, liberals, a lot of times fall for that kind of propaganda. But so people were like, because I think he talked about Madeline Pendleton in his video. And she made a video about it, bro. I had to go do some research to figure out who she was talking about because she refused. She was like, I don't call people out like that. She's like, this guy that everyone's talking about is really smart, has a ton of potential. I used to say the same stuff he's saying, so I understand where he's coming from. And let me just explain why I think differently. And then she explains it, and then she's like, and by the way, if you don't agree with that, that's okay. That's still okay. You might never get there, and that's all right. But it's good for you to at least understand why some people think this was right. There are so many people on the left that look like that. And my problem with some of the people who are more liberal is they latch onto specific examples of leftists acting badly online, and they point to it like that. But I mean, you got these stack of Jacobin magazines here. Pretty much everybody that writes in here comes from a completely different perspective. That's like desiring to teach people. What's the editor's name? This is one of their books right here. I think he wrote this. What's his name? Bhaskar Sunkara. So, like, I got to actually have a couple of beers with him at an event they did in Chicago that I went to. And these people, dude, like, they exist to educate the proletariat, to prepare them to take the right kind of action. So anyways, I get pretty passionate. I get pretty heated up about that. And the last thing I want to say too about that is there's like a tendency from liberals that I see to try to pit people of color, black people specifically, against leftism, as if that being a leftist or a socialist or a communist or Marxist-Leninist, that those are all for white people and that those are racist movements. But literally almost all of the socialists who have impacted me are black socialists. People like W.E. Du Bois, right? People like Kwame Ture, right? People like C.L.R. James, right? And I mean, the list goes on and on. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., socialist.
They say he's not a Marxist, but
he was a socialist.
I would say his later works, as he got later in his life, he changed a little bit.
Langston Hughes.
Yep.
Angela Davis.
There's a reason why that narrative is put out there, right? Is to divide and conquer. Same thing that happened back in the 70s and the 60s.
It's COINTELPRO.
Exactly.
That's why I called them feds earlier. Yeah. They're acting just like, they were put in there from COINTELPRO to disrupt the movement.
Yeah, and it's interesting for me, like, as I'm wading into these spaces and I'm just making observations, like, I think having deconstructed a religion in Christianity, and I'm still going to use the term even though, it's become too loaded, but like the ability to critically think is essential, not just from religion, but in these spaces where there's heightened levels of emotion, there's groupthink, there's very strict ideologies, there's purity testing. I noticed that a lot of the similar dynamics that happen in some of these more conservative spaces, as I was referring to, by heresy hunting and a lot of that stuff can exist on the left, but that doesn't mean that the ideas are wrong, because these are just humans who do human things. This is just socially, like, this is just anthropological stuff. Like, people have in-group bias. People have the inability sometimes to think with nuance, right? Like, the world is complicated. And so when we're trying to have conversations about how to fix things that are wrong with the world, if you interact in a space where everyone thinks the same thing, you might be wrong.
Yes.
But I think the thing that I'm frustrated by in this conversation is that the dynamic that you described earlier, where we talk about something that happens with, like, No Kings, and the left is pointing fingers and saying, like, hey, this is wrong, this isn't helpful. And I'm like, I think about people in my life who would be turned off 100%. To that finger pointing, that are so ready. Like,
dude, I would have been turned off.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And even on the side too, like, I think part of the reason that leftism is not always appealing to black people is because of some of the aesthetics. Like, you just don't see that many modern day leftism. The face of quote unquote the left isn't necessarily somebody that a lot of black people feel
bro, that's because COINTELPRO was effective.
Exactly. But yeah, I think about people in my life that are like, they may not be the most leftist individuals, but they have a lot of sympathy to the same ideas. And if they were to get the right information, they will move. But if you just point fingers at people that aren't quote unquote doing enough in your purity testing, you don't have the opportunity to pull some of those people in. And I think that's really important, especially as somebody who's being pulled in right now.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. I was trying to look up the name of this person because my memory is just so not incredible. But, like during COINTELPRO, bro, they had letters being written from Marcus Garvey and who was it in Africa? Oh man, I feel so dumb I feel so bad that I can't remember this name. Anyways, like, they had them, like, the FBI was like writing letters to the guy in Africa on behalf of Marcus Garvey, and then intercepting it, and then writing a letter to Marcus Garvey, and they were sowing all this discord. And there's a reason why there's not a big movement today within black communities that are socialists or leftists. It's growing, but you know why I think, bro, is I don't know why this is, but I think that when I read most, like, socialist thinkers, it just feels so much more powerful coming from when it comes from people that I think it must be that they have so much more recently come from a lineage that experience a degree of oppression that most white people just can't even fathom or imagine. Like, they don't have it in their lineage.
Doesn't feel theoretical.
It doesn't feel theoretical. Like, when white people talk about socialism, it feels like just like we're talking about an idea. Yeah. When I listen to Lauryn Hill, right, just sing about it, I'm like, you can feel something different.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, like, if it wasn't for people like FD Signifier, I would have never even entertained
Shouts out to FD.
it. Yeah, so like
Come on the pod. We love you.
he's doing the Lord's work, right?
Yeah,
like
he
he's introducing it in a way that's appealing on a cultural level. He's talking about hip hop,
Yeah.
right? He's talking about movies that are, or icons or sports, things that I already resonate with, and he's dropping nuggets
Yes.
that pique my curiosity. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, let me read more, let me go deeper. And so that's how people move, right? Is through methods like that. I mean, Hassan does similar things. I mean, he's a little bit more direct, but he's just somebody that people resonate with on just a personal level, and they can see themselves in a little bit more.
Bro, talk about Hassan. He's definitely somebody who is feeling all that stuff you've been talking about.
Right. They trying
you've
to
seen
cancel
some
him.
of these clips lately.
Yeah.
He's pissed off, dude.
No, I didn't see what happened. I know what happened with his dog, but
Yeah, like all that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've just seen like a couple of clips lately where Hassan's just like going off on chat.
tired of
And he's always goes off on chat, but he's just like, I'm done with this. Like, I hate leftists. I hate liberal. I've heard him talk like that all the time when he's just like annoyed or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, it does get to people, right? Like the constant witch hunting, like you talked about. And you did a TikTok talk. You talked about it on this episode already, but you did a TikTok about that, specifically saying this feels like evangelical energy.
yeah, I mean, it does, right? Like I was saying, the purity testing, the heresy hunting, the like making sure that someone is in your group and finding out, sifting out, like is this person? When I was in evangelical spaces, a lot of times people would say sound teaching.
Ooh, yeah.
Do you ever hear that term?
Yeah.
So a lot of times that was like code word for Calvinism.
Right.
And so these people were sound and they took the Bible seriously, and they read certain books and they listened to certain sermons and went to certain conferences, right? And they were signaling that this is our group, and they kind of like looked down their noses on people that didn't have sound teaching, right?
Yeah.
And so I see that a little bit on the left, right? Like liberals aren't quite as sound as the leftists, right? We and I think again, distinctions are fine, right? Like you can say I'm a leftist and not a liberal because we are looking to create different sorts of change in the world, right? But if you're looking your nose down on people know that.
Yeah, well, and you should point your nose down at systems and not at people.
Exactly.
Right.
Right. So and
So
so,
you should view every person as somebody who's trapped within that system.
Exactly.
That I'm here to, I want to help rescue that person.
Right.
I love that person.
Right.
And again, that takes us back to episode 1, talking about bell hooks, talking about how the left has abandoned love as a political project.
Yeah.
And dude, go back to the Bible, right? Like you could talk in the tongues of men and angel. You could recite theory all day long, but if you don't have love, it's as a resounding gong. I think we got to have love at the core.
Yeah. And again, the COINTELPRO, man, like you bring that up. Do we think that the CIA just stopped doing that?
Oh, exactly.
Or they just became a little bit more
like there
sophisticated?
are feds. Yeah, it's more sophisticated. There's probably people who don't know that are feds that don't know that they're feds.
Yep.
But like they're being propped up and their signal's probably being boosted because they have a message that confuses things and crosses wires.
Yep.
I definitely think that's a thing.
Yeah.
And but bro, on that TikTok you did, I saw you had a comment from like the Mr. Conscious Lee.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Shout
dope.
out, Lil Cosign. Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's crazy just to have conversations on TikTok. Again, I think I said this at the beginning, one of the earlier episodes. It feels like TikTok is a space on the internet where you can just make connections organically that you would never make elsewhere. And so it's just cool to have those opportunities.
Another place like that, low-key, is Substack. Like,
yeah, you've been putting me onto that.
Bro, Substack is weird because it's like the place where like intellectual giants go to like shit post. It does like post like pictures of dog. Like David Bentley Hart will be on there just like arguing with John Milbank about different aspects of like Hegelian interpretation in Moltmann or something like that. Yeah. And it's like, okay, I shouldn't have this kind of access to these people.
And it's probably just because not as many people are. It's a niche audience, so they feel like TikTok.
Exactly.
Everybody's in there, but Substack, you got to really know.
Yeah. And they're like huge names, but they're not like, you know what I mean? They're like huge names in the world. Like, who knows theology?
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah. All right, man. We're going to transition to our next topic. Speaking of theology, we've got a little game we're going to play.
I like games.
You like games? Okay. I think this will be a good one. We had a fun game last week with the TP USA list, top 5 rappers who will perform at TP USA Super Bowl halftime. So this time we're going to do something a little different. It's going to do red flag, green flag, church edition.
Okay. I'm in.
So basically how this is going to work is I have a list of things that either I observed in a church or just have known about from different churches that I've heard of on the internet. And so you're going to tell me whether this, for you, if you were going to this church, would be a red flag or a green flag.
All right, and then I have some for
You got
you.
a list? Okay.
Yeah.
So who, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
You go first. You go first.
Okay. So the first red flag or green flag is the pastor comes on stage wearing Travis Scott Jordan 1s.
Red flag.
Red flag, okay, why?
Okay, how much are Travis Scott Jordan 1s?
I mean, at this point, resale is probably $5,000.
Red flag, because I mean, literally, like, you got people in your church that don't know how they're going to pay rent, don't know how they're going to buy their groceries. Yeah. And I'm not saying you can't have nice
what if
things.
It's a mega church?
But don't be flexing on them. If it's a mega church, then you got a lot of people like that. You got even more people. You coming out here flexing like, look, I got your rent on my feet. Come on. Did you see the pastor? I saw a video the other day. This pastor parked his Bentley on the platform of the church. Where he's like, let me tell you why I parked my Bentley in the church.
Can't make
because
this shit up.
God gave us this Bentley for this church. And then someone in the crowd goes, can we drive it?
Right.
Bro, so fast, faster than you could, faster than Jesus coming back in a rapture. This dude goes, no, God would not want that. He said, God would not want that.
Make this shit up, man.
Amazing. But yeah, no, I definitely say, nah. Do you remember
Red
preacher
flag.
sneakers?
That's what I was going to ask you if you remember that. I do remember that.
Yeah, I actually just got rid of my preacher sneakers hoodie because it was like 3 sizes too big for me now.
Yeah.
Just like 2 days ago. But yeah, I had a preacher sneakers hoodie.
I couldn't rock with it. It was funny to see. Like, it was cool to watch. But to your point, like, it was like, that's a little cringy.
Yeah.
Pastor wearing a $5,000 sneakers.
Bro, honestly, it's lame. It's honestly as lame as corny shit to me.
Yeah,
Like,
I agree.
There's a pastor, I won't say his name, but he pastors in Los Angeles. Pretty popular church that a lot of celebrities go to. You could probably figure it out. And I was actually driving with him here in Chicago on our way to a golf course in the suburbs.
Okay.
And he's rocking a Louis Vuitton Supreme collab hoodie.
Nah, bro. Nah. Just nah.
So I'm like, why are you wearing that?
Oh, you bold.
I'm like, why are you wearing that? But hold on, I was setting him up from the beginning. I'm like, why are you wearing that? He's like, immediately gets into defensive mode. And this is what he says. He's like,
Book sales.
He goes, I don't buy clothes like this. He's like, Justin gave this to me because he wore it at a concert. He doesn't like to wear the same things that he wore at other concerts. And I'm like, oh, okay. I was like, that's cool. But I mean, like, no, it's like 80 degrees. Why are you wearing a hoodie?
Gotcha.
Got him. No, he's a nice guy, but yeah, it's kind of clown shit in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so number 2. This is one that I've experienced in person. So communion, right? There's many different modes of communions in church, the way they do it. But this mode, you come up, they're doing communion, and they've got a bowl of juice and a big hunk of bread, and you gotta rip the piece of bread off and put it in the juice, and everybody's doing that after you. Is that a red flag or a green flag?
Green flag.
Green flag.
Yeah,
okay,
major green flag. Because people be hungry, dude. One church, they're wearing your rent on their feet. Another church, they're like, hey, come get a meal. You know what I'm
See,
saying?
that's a red flag for me because I'm a germaphobe.
Oh, okay.
There's no way, I think it's a cultural thing. There's no way I gotta rip off a piece of bread somebody's holding in their hand and I'm sticking my dirty fingers in the juice.
I mean, I guess it depends on what you believe. Like, what do you believe about what's happening in communion? Because if you believe it's being transfigured into the body and blood of Christ, but you don't got to be Catholic to believe that.
Okay, so you gotta give me a theology lesson on that one. I thought that was the Catholics only.
Not only. I know Pentecostals that believe that.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, green flag for me, but that might be because I'm white. Honestly.
I think it is, man. I'm gonna be honest.
That might be a white thing.
Okay, so let's do 5. So that was 2. I'll do 3 more. The next one, and I think I know what you're gonna say about this one. The service is over 3 hours long.
Red flag.
Red flag, really?
Red flag.
Pentecostal 3 hours?
Yeah, listen, there was a time in my life where I loved a 3-hour church service.
Okay.
Now I'm a dad.
Okay, fair enough.
We don't got time for none of that.
Fair
okay,
enough.
And so you cannot be monopolizing. I'm never coming back.
But you grew up, you was a kid in 3-hour services, right?
3-4 hour services.
You survived? You made it out all right?
I was all about. Well, I survived with crippling anxiety and imposter syndrome. You know what I mean? Like, and a whole host of other problems. Like, I'm not trying to impute that to my children.
Fair enough.
But we'd be travailing in the altar for hours and hours, and just me trying to cast the demon of homosexuality out of my friends and stuff like that. Yeah, you don't want that.
We don't need that.
No,
See, we wasn't doing that at my church, but
red flag.
Long services for sure. Like, so when I was a kid, we would have the kids service downstairs, and then the adult service would be upstairs. And the kids service would be long sometimes. Like the regular service, like 3 hours, especially when I was super young.
Yeah.
Sometimes the kids service would be longer than the adult service.
Amazing.
Like it was just too much.
Out of the mouth of babes.
Out of the mouth of babes. It was too much, man. And I was a football guy, so 1 o'clock.
Oh yeah,
I need to go watch my Cleveland Browns. So 1 o'clock rolled around, I was tight.
Yeah,
you got to get out of there.
You were done. I do got to say this real quick though, that I just made a very light of casting the demon of homosexuality out of my friends, which is probably really triggering for a lot of people. But I literally laughed to keep from crying because I think about like some of the stuff I did and I participated in some of that world. That's why it was like such an instant red flag for me.
Yeah,
I was like, nah, nothing good has happened in 3 hours. Like Jesus is done talking to you. Go home.
Fair.
You know what I mean?
All right. So there's one I'm actually going to, maybe we won't skip this. I won't do it next though. Okay. So the pastor reads from the Message Bible translation.
Green flag.
Green flag. Okay. Why?
Yeah. I love Eugene Peterson, one of the greatest Old Testament scholars of our time, one of the ones with the most pastoral heart. He's a socialist.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
he was demonized.
Caveat that it's not a translation, and that he's clear about that. That it's a paraphrase.
Paraphrase. Okay.
Yeah, it's a paraphrase. And but I think he nails it. I think as long as you read that alongside anything else, most people are coming to the text. It doesn't matter what translation they read, they're going to get it wrong because they don't understand anything about the context. They don't understand anything about the historical development of the different passages, where it fits into the broader narrative. They don't understand anything about the goals of the different writers in each book. And so it really doesn't matter. But when you read that paraphrase, what you're really reading is one of the great biblical scholars of our time basically try to convey to you in the most contemporary words possible what is the most relevant spiritual meaning of this text.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, the spaces I was in, he was hate, man. That wasn't a real Bible if you read the Message.
Yeah. Calvinist people, they hate him.
Yeah, that'd be a green flag for me now too. Okay, last one. I'm gonna do this one. So this was actually a thing I heard. I didn't go to this church, but somebody that I know did.
Yeah.
The church was not called themselves multi-ethnic. They called themselves transracial.
Stop. Wait, you said you didn't go to the church?
No.
A transracial church? So they used to be black and now they're white? What is that?
I think he mixed up the terms.
Bro.
I think what they meant was transcending.
Bro. I mean, I believe in supporting all trans futures, so green light. Not white. No, that's a red light.
Yeah, I went to look at the church website. I think it's in Atlanta. They changed the name of the church, and it's not. I don't know if it was ever on the website, but I remember talking to somebody who went to church, and they said it was. The pastor liked to say they were transracial.
That's incredible.
Anyways, okay, so let's hear your list.
All right, so let's see. I got a bunch. We're gonna boil it down to my top 5.
Okay.
We're not religious. We just have a relationship with God.
Okay, so I have to figure out what mindset I want to answer these questions in. My current mindset, or when I was like
current mindset.
Current mindset. It's still a red flag, bro.
Yeah,
it's still a red flag.
Yeah.
I think I understand the heart behind it. They're trying to be more seeker friendly, but it just feels a little deceptive and just inaccurate. You're still a church, right? I know what Christianity is. It is a religion. You're trying a little bit too hard to be cool and relevant. That I don't buy it. And
it feels to me like they're masking a culture of no accountability or doctrine or structure, just the control of one person. Yeah. It's just double speak. Non-denominational doesn't really mean non-denominational. It means hyper-denominational, because if you had 100 church denomination with 100 churches in it, and that's one denomination. Right. Now they're all non-denominational. That's 100 new denominations led by one guy with no accountability.
Yeah. And I grew up in a non-denominational church. I didn't make that connection until later. I was like, wait a minute. Actually, you just made up your own rules.
Yeah, now you just have a new denomination.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, next one here we'll go with the Spirit was really moving today.
Dang, that's a tough one.
Somebody got out of church. You're at the spaghetti warehouse after service, and you're like, "How was service?" They're like, "Man, the Spirit was really moving today."
I'm gonna say green flag.
Okay.
I'm gonna say green flag because for me, if I'm gonna enter into a church, I want to have an experience. Okay. I don't want to just hear somebody talk. I don't like stale, dry, churches.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
grew up
yeah.
charismatic, so but I spent time in a lot of stale, dry churches. I just never could really get with it.
Yeah.
Even though like at the time, like the ideas and the quote unquote doctrine was quote sound.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to go to church. In those churches, they're never gonna say the Spirit was moving. That's woo woo. That's not biblical. It's not
I see.
doctrinal.
Okay.
So yeah, that's why I would say that's a green flag.
All right. Okay, we got another one.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's go with we're raising up the next generation of leaders.
Red flag, bro. What is this? We selling stuff? This feels like a MLM.
Yes.
Raising the next generation. In the parachurch ministry that I work for, they would say shit like that all the time. So I got residual trauma from hearing
I think
shit
that just means like free labor from interns that'll never be promoted or hired.
Raising up the next generation of leaders to work 20 hours a day and burn out and not get paid or get paid chump change. No, red flag.
Okay. All right, I got one more.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's go with. I might have a bonus one.
Okay.
You just have to trust the vision.
Red flag. Immediate red flag. That sounds like a pastor on a power trip.
Yes.
Sounds like a pastor that is trying to manipulate you into doing whatever he wants to do without giving you a good justification for it. Sounds like abusive leadership.
Just means like stop asking questions.
Exactly.
I listen, I don't have the answers to this and you're about to expose my whole grift. So
Absolutely
lay
not.
off.
Is that or God told me X, Y, and Z. I'm just doing what the Lord is leading me to do. All that spiritual abusive language.
All right, well, I got one more for you.
Bonus. Okay, let's hear it.
Bonus one. You talking to somebody at a church. You ask them, "Hey, how are things going at your church?" And they say, "It's going good. We're in a season of pruning."
Red flag. The pastor is in a scandal.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I don't know, some churches split, it's drama.
Yes.
It's all bad. You got a lot of red flags, but these are real.
Those are
These are real.
That's definitely a red flag for me too.
Absolutely.
It's kind of hard for me to find a green flag.
I know. I was thinking about this list and I was like, I got to find something that's more neutral. So I had to refine my list.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah, we all went to the protest together.
I never heard that one.
They do that. They got some churches out here doing that. But okay, all right, bro. So what's our next question?
The next question is, since we talk about churches, you might as well keep it pushing. Is Jesus standing in the way?
Okay.
So this is actually coming from a clip that's been circulating on social media from brother Deante Kyle from the Grits and Eggs podcast. He's been blowing up recently. But so this was a clip from his longer podcast that was clipped on social media. And he's talking about the Black experience in America and the civil rights movement and how that's connected to today. And he says that for a lot of Christians, Jesus is standing in the way of them being able to appreciate the sacrifice that our ancestors made and gave, the blood that they spilled in the streets through the civil rights movement, through lynching, through all the things that Black people had to do in this nation to fight to get the rights that we have today. And so he's making the point basically that a lot of Black Christians will give honor and praise to Jesus for the blood he spilled, but they're unwilling to give the same level of honor and praise to that blood that was spilled by the ancestors. So let's play the video real quick and then we can come back.
All right, sounds good.
All right, let's play it. Okay, so it sparked a lot of conversation. I've seen probably like 50 people stitch it, respond to it, Christian,
I've seen a lot.
He's even come back since it's become a meme. I don't know if you've seen him. He's put on a devil.
I saw it with the big horns, the whole mask.
Because people are basically calling him demonic.
Yeah.
He's been eating it up. I think it's hilarious. I love Deante Kyle.
Yeah. He's dope.
Yeah, I actually saw him here in Chicago at the when Chance put out his album release.
Oh,
he was at the event. I was like, yo, that's Deante Kyle. Pretty sure. So shout out to him. But I think for me, it's an interesting conversation. I feel a lot of different ways about it. So one, when we talk about the ancestors, I think that has triggered a lot of Christians because throughout the history of Christianity, in its interaction with African and Black people, ancestor worship was seen as demonic, which is why he's putting on the horns and the devil costume.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it kind of intersects my identity in some interesting ways. So I'm Nigerian, but I'm also African American, right? So my dad is an immigrant from Nigeria. My mom is a Black American descendant of slaves. So I have a somewhat unique experience. I don't hear it talked about a lot. I've met a few people that that share this experience, but I don't hear it talked about a lot. But a lot of times you'll hear like in the Black community, there's a rift a lot of times between African immigrants and African Americans.
Right,
and I completely understand why there's a disconnect sometimes, but growing up, I just never really felt that disconnect because my dad married a Black American.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that doesn't mean that there couldn't be bias there against African Americans from that side of my family, but my dad also worked with Black kids throughout my whole life as a social worker. And so for me, like, there wasn't a disconnect between my identity as a Nigerian man and a Black man. If anything, I feel like I kind of discounted that African part because I didn't interact with that side of my family nearly as much because most of my mom's side, they lived in Columbus. I interacted with my aunts and uncles and cousins all the time. So, and also I was in the suburbs, so I was othered already, right? Like being in the minority as a Black person. Yeah. And a lot of times when I'm around white people, they don't even necessarily recognize that I'm African or just from my facial features. But when I'm in Black spaces, most of the time people say, "Oh, you Nigerian?" So
interesting.
And I feel seen, and I like that.
Yeah.
But that's just a difference. And my dad also, like growing up, we would sit around the dinner table and we would have conversations about what I would eventually understand to be systemic racism in underserved communities and how that affects a lot of Black people in the city. And, we would talk about the difference between my experience being in a suburban school versus a lot of kids he would work with that were in inner city schools. And so I don't know, to me, there wasn't ever a disconnect.
Yeah.
But as I've grown older and have had conversations in community, I've recognized that for a lot of folks, there is a distinction that is made between the diaspora Africans around the world and African Americans because the experiences are different. And so when we talk about ancestors, it's weird because like ancestor worship is something that comes from Africa, and I think a lot of Black people want to reclaim that because it is a part of our culture and our history. But there's still like a disconnect culturally because a lot of times Black people don't necessarily want to claim Africans, and Africans don't really want to claim Black people. So it just kind of creates this weird dynamic. But in addition to that, when you add Christianity into the mix,
right,
a lot of times, I know for me growing up, I would have thought the same thing. Even though I'm Nigerian, I would have thought ancestor honoring and worship and a lot of those spiritualities were of the devil, right? And so that part of my culture and my identity is kind of severed, right? And so that when he talks about, honoring the ancestors, it resonates with me because of that split identity. Does that make sense?
It feels like Jesus was in the way.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you a question about your dad.
Yeah.
What was his background spiritually growing up in Nigeria?
Yeah. So his family was Christian.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you ever talked to him about? Because I know there's a lot and man, I wish I had read this stuff more recently,
Sure.
But I have read a decent amount from a couple of different theologians, one from Cameroon and one from Tanzania, about ancestor worship in Christian communities, like blending ancestor veneration.
I've heard of that
and
too.
like viewing Christ, praying to Christ as as the ultimate ancestor veneration.
Yeah.
And like trying to fold those into each other.
Yeah.
Did he ever talk at all about like residual leftover of like African spirituality in his personal life, or is that completely wiped out for him?
Yeah, I mean, we just didn't have that many spiritual conversations in general. Like, growing up, he didn't really go to church with us. So, there was a period of time where I was trying to proselytize him, and then we had more conversations, and he's like, I believe in God just like you. I just don't engage in it in the way that you do.
Yeah.
Right. And so I had to learn kind of to respect that and recognizing some of the things he experienced back home. So we didn't have a lot of those conversations in depth. But as I've gotten older, I think if I was still a Christian now, I'd probably be a bit more curious about that. But I think at the time, Jesus was in the way. And so that's syncretism. That's out of bounds, right? Like Christians, we respect those who come before us, but we don't honor them. We don't tie spirituality to ancestor worship, right?
Right.
Christ is the one we pray to. He's our intercessor. So he was in the way of that.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is, I'm not going to be able to speak really authoritatively on this because I'm a little bit rusty here, but and I think that some of those people, some of those theologians I was talking about, those African theologians, in other branches of Christianity, in fact, the majority of Christians around the world actually do venerate the saints and do venerate Mary, which are our ancestors in many ways.
Funny how that works.
Yeah, and some of them are even African ancestors. You know, some of the earliest church fathers were African, like indigenous from Africa, not like, you know what I mean, you know, Greeks that like came into Egypt, right? Yeah. And so, you know, I wonder, there's got to be something there. Like, I know there's a difference between like latria, dulia, hyperdulia, which is like veneration of Mary. I do think though that in veneration of the saints in Christianity, everything kind of still flows through Christ. So the you know, you're asking the saints to pray for you through Christ, or to Christ, to God through Christ. And that's interesting. I also recently saw. I read a book recently called Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark.
Okay.
Have you heard of this book?
I have not.
Very interesting book about a young lady who basically is in this world, like the KKK are like demons.
Okay.
From another dimension.
Okay.
And she's like a demon slayer. She like hunts KKK. She's like a young black girl in the South. Yeah. Like her and a couple other people.
The Nation of Islam, their founding myth is sort of like that. White people are all demons.
Right. Yeah. And but anyways, it was an interesting book because it had there was a lot of ancestor stuff in there, and you know, I feel like not only potentially is Jesus standing in the way of ancestor veneration for African descendants, but potentially in the way for all of us, from what we all can learn from the indigenous people of Africa. Yeah. Because, you know, and especially in reading Yurugu, which we'll get into that later, maybe we can just touch back on this later. Sure. But like, there is a lot there where you talk about the Western mind being split too much from like spirituality and mind, reason and feelings and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So this is also just an interesting conversation, because a lot of times as a black person, I'll name like some conversations feel like they're more in-house. So it's like, how do we navigate that as a black person and a white person having this conversation? I don't know. I don't always have the answers, but I think it's just something that I want to name and be mindful of as we continue to have conversations like this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to me, it's like, you know, as I explore my, you know, spirituality forever, like, I think about like what has the world been robbed of because what Africans have been robbed of. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, what did they have to offer the world that they haven't even been able to practice themselves? Yeah. And so, you know, I think there's just like that conversation Deante Kyle's opening up is just so much bigger than like the internet drama. Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me of, you heard of the book, how Europe underdeveloped Africa. It's taking it from an economic lens, but we can also look at it from a spiritual lens, right? Like how is the development of African spirituality? Of course, it still exists, right? But how could it have developed and been in community with other cultures across the globe in a way that it didn't get to be because of the totalizing, we'll get into this with the book, totalizing nature of European culture. But there's another point that I think about on a personal level when it comes to this conversation, and it's around the Black Lives Matter movement, right? So in like early 2010s, Black Lives Matter movement is popping off. I'm still a Christian, evangelical, trying to figure out how, if a black person can be evangelical in that space. But one of the things that I would hear a lot, people would say, and I was like trying to figure out how to navigate it, is I'm okay saying the words Black Lives Matter, I'm with the slogan, I'm with the sentiment, but I'm not with the movement. And I think for me, Jesus was getting in the way because the movement was led by queer women who had Marxist analysis of capitalism, who were okay with African spirituality, who were not Christian. And so for me, I think there was a lot of things that I would have been able to learn from them and from the movement beyond just the slogan and beyond just the sentiment, but because what I viewed as Jesus, right? Like, and I think that's the thing that we have to parse out as people is like Christianity. I've become convinced is, I don't even know what the thing Christianity is. I believe more in Christianities, plural. Oh, 100%. So when we talk about Jesus being in the way, there is no such thing as Christianity. Yeah. So when we talk about Jesus being the way or Christianity being the way, it's a specific
version of Christianity that gets in the way.
The imperialist colonizer Jesus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The white Jesus, the one that is not for black people, that version of Jesus is getting in the way.
Yeah, the creation of empire.
Right. And so for me, like in that period of time, I think there was a lot of things that I could have learned and been on a journey similar to the journey that I'm on now of economic analysis, of understanding and deconstructing things like homophobia, transphobia, patriarchy. There was a lot of things that were standing in the way of my vision for liberation at the time. And it was a white Jesus that was standing in the way. It was an imperialistic Jesus that was standing in the way of me having a broader vision for liberation in the 21st century. Yeah.
Bro, that's Tash if I ever heard of him.
But yeah, man, I don't know. I think we should just get into the book since we've kind of touched on it a few times. So you want to like maybe give us a little bit of background on it? I know you made a couple TikToks on Yurugu. Yeah,
I've talked about it a little bit, but like, so there's this, African studies, right? Professor and scholar named Marimba Ani. Yeah. And you actually introduced me to this book.
Yep.
And, so it's called Yurugu, an African-centered critique of European cultural thought and behavior.
Yep.
And basically, she uses this myth from the Dogon people in Mali, in West Africa. Yep. It's a part of their creation myth where there was this one kind of like deity, you could call him, or spiritual being that most of the rest were being born with their spiritual pair, a divine feminine and a divine masculine. Yep. But Yurugu, was eager to get into the world, wanted to master the world, and came into the world without his feminine counterpart. And so he was unbalanced in everything. And he devoured everything that he tried to attain. Because he was lacking something, he could never fundamentally get back. Like he was going to be missing a half of themselves forever.
It's powerful.
He basically spent everything just trying to learn and understand everything. And so what Marimba Ani says is she uses this idea of Yurugu as essentially like a metaphor for understanding all of Western cultural thought and behavior, and reads it through that lens. And when you break it down, I mean, it gets. First of all, the book is phenomenal, and it's
very comprehensive.
It's very comprehensive, and it's got a lot of like what do you call it, like illustrations to help you even understand the concepts, which to me was super duper helpful and compelling. But basically, that the European culture is based on a deep split between material and spiritual, mind and body, human and nature, subject and object. And I found this really interesting as well as I've dug into more Eastern spiritualities and even in Eastern Orthodox Christian theologies that you start to see a little bit more in developing, maybe in Maximus the Confessor, some of the Christian mystics, but even now in David Bentley Hart, writing about monism, right? Or moving towards a non-dualist understanding of nature and supernature. And so, you kind of get to the heart of that split, that idea that there is this big difference between nature and supernature. Once you believe that, you can then view the whole world as the whole world is not divine.
Yes.
The whole world is not meaningful. There is something else out here that's divine. That's what really matters. And in Christianity, that manifests like going to heaven. Even the way they view the end of the world. God's going to, come back. He's going to take all of us up. He's going to destroy the world. We're going to go away to heaven. That's how so many Christians in America and the evangelical mindset view it. And it betrays this fact that they don't view the world as something sacred. They don't view people as something sacred, and that allows you to support all kinds of awful policies. And I think that's honestly one of the reasons I'm, even as somebody who doesn't believe in God, like I call myself an agnostic atheist, not an anti-theist, but an atheist, just meaning I lack a belief in God. I don't disbelieve in God. I don't have a belief in God. It's not somebody go, well, how did you choose to be an atheist? I didn't choose. I'm just using that word to describe the reality of how I find myself. But even then, I am very skeptical of the kind of scientism dogma of the kind of rational, mechanistic world all functioning within itself, because I see how that is used in European, and Yurugu really kind of helped open my eyes to this a little bit more, how that can be used to really strip the world and of meaning, and that's where you get nihilism even arriving as a cultural possibility, because the world is stripped of meaning.
So many things downstream of that. Capitalism is very much downstream of that idea, because the world is now an object. And what do we do with objects? We use objects.
Right.
So instead of it being infused with the divine energy, and instead of it being connected to us, like we are connected to the world in an inextricably linked way, according to non-Western thought.
Right.
But if you separate us from the environment, then we can use the environment for whatever we want.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of a conversation I had with a friend about the book a couple months ago. She's from Cape Verde. We're talking about Christianity specifically.
Yeah.
And her experience as a Christian and my experience as someone who was a Christian. Now, she's known me from before I left until after now. So we were kind of having a conversation about like how I view Christianity now and some of the things I was learning from reading the book. And I think for me, I'm realizing how much my idea of what Christianity is tethered to European thought and behavior, even if it's still in a black church, even if it's in a space that doesn't have that many white faces. Like the fundamental reality of what Christianity means for me is shaped by this broader European like superstructure of the philosophy. And so as I'm having this conversation with her, she's like, for her, like culture and religion are not separable. And I'm like, well, how do you like make a distinction between what Christianity is? Like Christianity is not your culture. But she's like, well, you're making that distinction because of the way that you've been introduced to Christianity.
Right.
And she's like, for me, like my culture, and of course, like she came to Christianity a little bit later, but for her, she still like doesn't see the world inherently through a Western lens.
Right.
And so some of the like dichotomies and distinctions, they just don't compute to her brain. So it was a really interesting conversation. And it kind of like continues to make me wonder and think about kind of like you're saying, like I'm an agnostic, but I continue to like mull over like what is Christianity, what is spirituality, like how is in the journey of quote unquote deconstruction. It's not just about the Christianity, it's about the superstructure of philosophy, the ways of viewing time, the ways of viewing myself, the ways of viewing emotions and reason and thought and like there's so many things to continue to unwind. And so this book was a really interesting endeavor in continuing that deconstruction. And specifically another thing that I thought about when it comes to Christianity is how the universal, and I'm curious what you think about this, the universalizing nature of Christianity in the Western tradition leads very directly to imperialism. If you think that Christianity is the religion for all people, not just for Europeans, not just for Israelis, but this is the religion for all people. How that idea that seems so fundamental to my version of Christianity, how does that lead to imperialism and the domination of cultures, and not necessarily coming in saying let's have a co-equal relationship culturally, but no, I have to come in and dominate your culture because it's evil.
So, well, I don't think that it does.
Okay.
So I think that imperialism, empire, uses Christianity as a tool. And then imposes that tool in all the ways that you said. I'm not trying to invalidate like exactly what you said and felt like is exactly right. I just think it's like the chicken or the egg, and it's like the chicken, right? Like that ideas, I agree with Marx that ideas do not arise on their own, that they are born out of the material conditions in which they arise, and that it's out of our lived experience that the idea comes into being. And so I think that like, because all of the things, all the great evils that we talk about when we talk about capitalism existed before capitalism. Capitalism is just the primary tool and weapon in which that's used today. And then Christianity is like a sub-weapon of capitalism today. It like flows even further, but it stems, in my opinion, with imperialism and colonialism, that which probably goes back even further to just like base human impulses of greed and the desire to dominate and some more animalistic instincts. But yeah, I think that Christianity was used from a very early time as a weapon to because and I'm doing I'm preparing for a series right now on TikTok and Instagram on church history, going 101 all the way through. And it really is a delicate balance. Some people just try to paint it all like, oh, Constantine just decided what was Christian doctrine. That's not exactly true. Yeah. A lot of times, like what the emperor liked as the church developed actually didn't win out, and something else went out. But it's very much true that there are always factions competing for power within those. Sure. And a lot of times, the dominant theological argument that won because it was being backed by power in some way that wanted to use it to control people.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's so many things that could be said about Yurugu. I think the religious piece is interesting because, again, like I hear what you're saying. It sounded to me like she was, and it doesn't mean she's necessarily right. She was tracing the Jewish faith as being like a faith for a specific people group. Then Christianity became the faith for all people. And that was coming from the same, there's ideas, structural ideas from even Platonic thought that informed Paul. That informed his view of Christianity. So she's kind of drawing a straight line all the way through. So I just found it interesting, and I'm still not sure what to make of it. Right.
I like when I read her talk about that. Like to me, that still fits in what I'm saying. Okay. It's just like people want power over other people.
Even Paul, right? And so
yeah, maybe to some degree, but what I mean is like even like a lot of Paul's ideas. Paul thought the world was ending any day now. Right. He was like operating under like a very different like frame of mind than a sane, rational person.
Said they were Paul, who wrote some other more divisive texts and were trying to vie for power in the church.
Yeah. And as a lot of that developed, but I think that like the ideology is what's used as a tool to reinforce what someone is trying to gain materially.
Yeah.
But I don't think is in disagreement necessarily with what she's saying. I see her, but this is interesting that you're talking about this because if you go look at my Yurugu post on TikTok or on Instagram, I have some people arguing with me about this.
Interesting.
In there, right there, being like, imagine this guy thinks that it all started with capitalism. I'm like, no, like capitalism is just like the newest face, the newest mask that Yurugu is wearing.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think it leads me back to something that was always a debate within a lot of the Black Christian spaces I was in, back some years ago, is Christianity the white man's religion? This is always we had lectures and seminars asking this question, and I'm of two minds when it comes to this. Like, from one perspective, I agree with Yurugu's assessment that the dominant Christianity that has kind of taken the world by storm in very bad ways and imperialized and colonized, like that is the white man's religion. But there is a Christianity that is not necessarily that. And if it's wedded to a culture that is African, indigenous, or whatever, it doesn't have to be the white man's religion. But it's hard to deconstruct that when you have a community that may have their own religious tradition. So why would I take Christianity if it is not the ultimate religion? Can we live in a world where spiritual traditions can coexist and we can take, good ideas from one and from the other? And it's hard for me to even, because of my background and our backgrounds, see that as a valid thing. It feels very relativistic, but I think there is something to that, right? Like, can we strip away that universalizing nature from Christianity that says this is the only way? And I made a video earlier, like that oftentimes leads to fascism. Because if I have the right way of thinking,
once you try to totalize things,
and I have no tolerance for your viewpoint, and that can happen on the left as well, you just kind of get into this place where you silence dissent, like we're seeing happen in America, and people are getting behind that.
I mean, even like the Coptic churches in Africa, their Bible is very like a lot of denominations' Bibles are different. They contain different books. They contain books that no other denomination contains, where they're just like, these are ours. I think that's great. That's beautiful. Like honestly, who cares?
I mean, it's easy for us to say. I don't have a dog in the fight anymore. But
anyways, all right. Well, bro, this has been a lot of fun, man.
I appreciate it. It's been a dense conversation, but a really rich one.
Thanks for having me over.
For sure.
I'll make sure to bring some goat's blood to anoint the door
Absolutely
next time. Or some oil.
I'll be hosting a podcast by myself.
Okay. All right, I'm going to Carrabba's, so I'll just bring some oil from there.
There we go. I can do oil, no blood.
All right, bro. Well, hey, listen, man, this has been great.
It's been a great conversation.
Dude, thanks for having me over to your apartment once again.
Absolutely.
I have a lot of fun.
Anytime. We have great conversations.
I love it, dude.
For sure. Well, guys, this is the 3rd episode of Ask the Next Question. If you're rocking with us all the way to the end, shout out to you. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know if you have any other topics you would like us to touch on in the future. We would love to see you guys. If you're on Spotify, actually, leave us a review. It really helps us out in the algorithm as well. Please. Or Apple Music. Share with your friend. But yeah, until next time, we'll see you later.
Peace.